Well, hi friend, it's Trisha from Tending to Home. Thanks for stopping by here today. Today I want to talk about something I've been working on all spring and summer long, and that is growing potatoes. I have had so much fun growing potatoes this year. It's just been interesting to grow them in a number of different ways and see how the outcome comes out. I've always liked potatoes and carrots because when you grow them, it's like you don't know what's happening underneath the ground. So it's so much fun to go out there, almost like digging for treasure when you take them up and uproot them. So I want to go out to the garden and show you a little bit about how I grew my potatoes this year. And then we're going to come back inside and we're going to do a recipe that is near and dear to my heart for fall. Potatoes are wonderful because you can use them in so many different ways, and frankly, they're very inexpensive to get at the grocery store. So even if you don't grow your own potatoes, it's totally fine. If you want to, I'll put the timestamp in the description below of when we start our recipe, so you don't have to go through all of the growing potato harvest. But you might be surprised how easy it is to grow potatoes even if you don't have a garden whatsoever. So think about joining me out in the garden and then we'll come back in here. Let's get started. The size of the potatoes that I pulled out of this area were unbelievably huge. They were planted in late March, I would say, and grew into midsummer, I'd say. And we are still eating off from those potatoes. I didn't even weigh them. I should have, but it had to have been 50 to 100 pounds of potatoes. I'll try and show you some pictures of what that looked like. So that was our first grow season. We did grow bags early in our hoop house, and those produced very well. Then this bed, and then I had some leftover seed potatoes to use, so I went ahead and planted our raised bed, which we're going to look at. And then I did the last few little ones in those grow bags for one last shot. So potatoes are really easy to grow. I highly recommend you giving them a try. But by far, so far, until I look at that raised bed, this has been the best method, is in ground. And gosh, they sure taste good. So here I am at my potato bed, and as you can see, they're starting to come to an end, which signals the time to dig them up. So why don't I get started digging these up, and we'll see what kind of a harvest that we get. I'm not complaining for the small amount that I planted, and this was just a bed that wasn't being used. So I think we did pretty good. So I'm pretty happy with this. Now I just need to brush them off and lay them out on some drying racks and let them cure for a few weeks before they get put in storage or eaten. So we're back inside now after our harvest out in the garden, and we're going to get started on this recipe. And basically, I've kind of created this recipe out of a number of other recipes that I've found in various different books. And basically, it's a potato leek soup. I don't know how to explain it, but it's just yummy. So let's get started on the ingredients, okay? We're gonna take some of the potatoes that I grew earlier this spring that have already had a chance to cure down in my basement. They're ready to go. You can use fresh potatoes, there's nothing wrong with that, but I do find that I have better success with cured potatoes when it comes to something where you want it to be smooth and rich and creamy, okay? So I'm gonna start out with, I've got about 6 potatoes here. I've also got 2 bunches of leeks, and there's 3 leeks in each bunch. I like the leek because it has a mild flavor, and they are something you can find at this harvest time of the year. Now, if for some reason you want to make this recipe and you don't have leeks, don't worry about it. Leeks are very similar to onions. If you use a mild onion, like a yellow onion or a white onion, then that would totally be fine. You could even substitute shallots if you have those. So don't worry about being hung up on leeks, okay? Also, some of my homegrown garlic. We're gonna use some homegrown carrots. So these are some of my fun carrots that I've grown. You'll need a can of full-fat coconut milk. If you're not a fan of coconut milk, don't worry about that. You can use real cream. Unfortunately, I can't have real dairy. It doesn't do well with my rheumatological health issues that I suffer from. So for inflammation reasons, I can't have real cow's dairy. I wish I could because I love it, but the full-fat coconut milk is a really good substitute. You will want some celery. This is celery I grew in the garden, and it's already been all chopped up and frozen. You might want to add some kielbasa. Now this is an all-natural, sugar-free, smoked fresh turkey kielbasa. It doesn't have any of the yucky stuff in it that I can't have, like gluten. This is paleo friendly. So you can find really good versions of this, but a regular beef kielbasa works just fine as well. You don't have to add this. This is optional if you are meat-free. That's totally understandable. And then some sort of stock. Now, this is a pork stock, and you can use chicken stock, you could use vegetable stock, whichever stock you have, just some form of liquid that isn't water, just because it adds more flavor, in my opinion. Now we're going to use some other seasonings and such, but these are the basics. So why don't you gather these up and we'll get started on the recipe. Here we are. We're gonna light our stove. Now, this is just a stainless steel stock pot that I have. You could use a cast iron enamel, but something like this works great. What I'm gonna do is I'm going to add some of my rendered bacon fat. Now you could use any fat you want. You could use coconut fat, butter, ghee, any kind of fat like that would work. The reason why I'm using bacon fat is because we actually make our own bacon from pork belly and smoke it ourselves, so I know what's in this. You'll see there's even some little bits of bacon pieces left in there. It tastes so much better than just using regular coconut fat, but I will say coconut fat will do the job. It's just this adds a little bit of that smoky bacon flavor, which, let's face it, is yummy. So we're gonna go ahead and melt that in there. Oh, I wish you could smell it. It smells so good. Maybe at some point I will have to share with you how we smoke our own bacon from a big piece of pork belly. So as this is getting warmed up, I'm gonna go ahead and take my garlic cloves and I'm going to crush them. Sorry, that was loud. And we're gonna go ahead and put these in here. So that garlic and the bacon will start getting really fragrant. It smells so good already. Okay, so we've got our garlic in there. We're just gonna kind of slightly saute that and adjust my heat a little bit here now that we've got it nice and warm. And next we're going to add our leeks. Now we'll just saute this for a little while to kind of get them to a wilty stage. Okay, these have had just a minute or two to start almost to the point where they're browning. You can see in here where we're starting to brown a little bit. And that's okay. That's bringing out the flavor in the leeks. It's getting a little bit of the moisture out of them. It's breaking them down a little bit. To this, we are going to add our chopped carrots. Now I'm going to use some of my homegrown celery. This is a much stronger flavor than celery you would get at the grocery store, so I'm putting in about 1/4 to 1/3 of a cup. I would say if you're using celery from the grocery store, probably 1/2 cup would be good. Just need a little bit of that flavor. And we're going to let this saute for a little while longer. At this point, we are going to go ahead and add our chopped potatoes. And we're going to add our stock. Now this is about 1/4 of stock. This is just what I happen to have on hand from another recipe that I had made. Give that a good stir. Now you can see this is going to make a decent sized pot of soup. Like I said, I have teenage boys who can eat me out of house and home, and a husband who is a hearty eater as well. So that's great for me, but you could take this recipe, which I will remind you is down in the comments, or not the comments, excuse me, the description below. And you can take it in half, you could double it. It's a pretty simple recipe that you could kind of do anything you want with it. Now, ideally, you'd like to have everything covered over with your liquid that you're using, whatever stock it is you chose to use. So I'm gonna add just a little bit more water to the top of this to cover it. And once I've done that, I'm going to add a bay leaf in there. You can see that, a bay leaf. And that's just gonna sit in there and make a nice fragrance, which will add to the flavor of the soup. So let's put a little more water in and we'll let this start to come to a boil and soften up all the vegetables that are inside of this pot. And I've tested that this is starting to get soft. You can see how it's even, as I stir it, I can kind of mash the potatoes and the carrots. That's perfect. Okay, so the first thing that you're going to want to do is go ahead and take out that bay leaf and set that aside. And then we're going to take our submersion blender and we're going to go ahead and blend this up. This is going to be kind of loud. I'll be back as soon as I'm done. Now I'm done pureeing. Set that aside. And you can see it's almost as if it's a runny mashed potato consistency. This is great. You don't want it to be so runny, but you don't want it to be too thick either, because we are going to add our cream. So now is when I would add my full fat coconut milk. Now you can see that's real fatty on the top, but there's going to be some liquid underneath. We're just going to go ahead and put that in. And give that a stir, and that should give us a much creamier soup. Okay, so while this is still nice and warm, we're gonna go ahead and add in our last items. So we're gonna put in that turkey sausage or kielbasa, stir that in. And here is where I like to add some other herbs. Now, you can do some parsley. That's a homegrown parsley that I have. But what I'm gonna put in is something sneaky that has a lot of really good health properties. And this is actually my home grown, well, technically not homegrown, but picked by hand and foraged nettles. So these are some nettles that I have harvested. Nettles are really good for you, and they come off looking like parsley when you put them in a soup. No one will know the difference, and they will have so many more health benefits than just using plain old parsley. This is also the time that you would want to go ahead and add in some salt. I say start with about a teaspoon of salt for a pot of soup this big, and then they can season it themselves further. And last but not least, I like to add a little bit of freshly ground black pepper. And again, they can season it further themselves. So we'll go ahead and get this all stirred in. We'll put it back on the stove for just maybe 5 minutes. You don't want to scorch it, but just enough to make sure that that meat is all the way heated through, since it's already pre-cooked. And just like that, our soup is finished. Now I'm gonna just scoop a little bit out and have a taste test. It's rich and creamy, and I think my family is going to love it. Now, one thing that I think is kind of fun to add to this is a little bit of grated cheese. Now, I can't have cow's dairy, but I can have sheep's and goat's milk and the cheeses that come from that. So this is a sheep's cheese. Just add a little bit of fresh cheese to the top, and let me give it a try. You'll notice that this soup is a little bit on the yellow side. That's from the carrots. Oh, so delicious. Warming on a cold fall night or winter's night. I highly recommend trying this recipe. You will not regret it. Thanks so much again for joining me here at Tending to Home. I hope you enjoyed this recipe. If you found any value in today's video, could you give it a thumbs up for me? And also, if you'd like to know more about when I post upcoming videos, please hit the subscribe button. And when you do that, you'll see a little bell and you can click on that, and that will help you to know when I've uploaded my next video. Who knows what we'll do next here at Tending to Home, but I hope you'll join me again next time. Thanks so much again, and have a great day.